Greetings, YouTube. Yes, I know that I've been picking apart 5e, 5th edition, a little bit here and there for months now. Um, but there are aspects of the rules that I really want to drill into that I don't want to be tying up my overall thoughts on the game when I get around to doing an overall review. So they're going to be reviews, films like this repeatedly, and I apologize. But today we're going to talk about stat caps, statistic caps, where a statistic can only go so high. Now, some of you folks out there will remember, or maybe even maybe you've only heard of it. Back in the days when non-human species within D&D had caps to their level, so you could only go so far with a halfling or a dwarf or an elf, because there were level caps. And they drove me nuts. The concept that there would be level caps on someone bugged the crap out of me, because that is a gaming writer telling you that you're allowed to have that much fun. Humans can have all the fun they want, but that's the amount of fun you're allowed to have if you want to play a dwarf. And in addition, if you were playing a non-human, you were playing a non-human. You weren't playing a dwarven wizard or a halfling cleric. No, no. You were playing an elf or dwarf or halfling. Yeah, they were ancestral classes, not just like a human who could play a human rogue or a human fighter or a human ranger. No, humans were the default and had every single option in the universe, whereas elves could only play themselves. That kind of limitation drove me crazy. If you present me with a really cool ancestry, I want to be able to figure out how many possible ways and directions I can take that ancestry. Um, so level caps bugged the crap out of me. So 5th edition has introduced to D&D proper, the actual game itself, level caps on your stats. So your stat can only go to 20. Now, I am fully aware that there are ways within the rules to get it to go above 20, but those ways are very rare and very much a corner case, and it would be possible to play an entire 20 level character and never encounter them. So we are going to, for the purposes of discussion, say that your average player is never going to encounter a means of raising a stat above 20. Now, back in the ancient immortal time, in the past, stats had really crappy bonuses. 3rd edition did that better. They really formalized it and made the kind of bonuses I think the game should have always had, which is that for every 2 points above 10, you get a +1 bonus. Though why we haven't gotten rid of the stats themselves and just use the bonuses is a bit of a mystery. I know it's a legacy thing. Every game has, everybody wants to think that D&D has 3 to 18, but just having bonuses would be so much simpler. You have a 0 bonus, you're an average person. Got a +1, hey, you're a little bit above average. Got a +3, you are really above average, and all that kind of thing. It'd be so much easier. Um, and I liked that setting, that way of doing it. It showed tangible, real world results when you sunk either characteristics from a roll or a point buy into a statistic, and then you dedicated your time over the levels of keep dumping points into it, or you got wishes or something else to help you raise up your statistic as high as you wanted it to go. There were no caps. You could take that stat as high as you could conceivably get within your character's lifespan and whatever your GM would let you get away with. Okay? And I like that. You could become demigods, and that is exactly what player characters are, in my opinion. High-level player characters, they should be warping the fabric of reality itself by merely walking into a room. They are that powerful, and I don't have a problem with that. I've always very much viewed 3.5 or P1 as very wushu in that regard. It is just, you're just epically powerful characters. Yeah, you can play grim and gritty, go for it, but it has the capacity to be that epic. And I like that aspect. And I'm not even talking about getting into like the really high level stuff, the epic or the mythic rules that were 3.5 and in P1. No, I'm just talking about ordinary everyday characters that, without taking the mythic stuff into account, could still become incredibly legendary, incredibly powerful. You threaten gods themselves when you're that powerful. And I like that. Then along comes 5th edition and they say, nope. Now, first of all, they reduce all bonus ranges from 1 to 5 to 1 to 3. P2 did the same thing. They're reining things in. And I see that as not a positive. When you're starting to tell me, when you're starting to rein things in, that means that you don't understand how to give people fun without the constraints. Because we're not talking about like actual physical like roller coaster rides where you have to make sure that everyone is safely buckled in or they get hurt. This is a game at tabletop level. We can do anything we want to. And I personally think that a GM who's got the on the ball can handle people who have really high levels of power, and it can be still fun. I knew a guy from the D&D Usenet group back in when you used back when the news groups on Usenet were actually functioning. I haven't seen a legitimate message from the D&D group in months. A guy named Sea Wasp, and his real world name is Rick Spoor. He is now a fantasy author. And Sea Wasp is one of the smartest people I've ever met when it comes to D&D. And I met him when second edition was the game of choice, and he fully endorsed hopping onto the third edition bandwagon. He wasn't a fan of fourth edition either. I don't know what his opinion is on fifth edition because again, the news groups are essentially dead. But at one time, he read a campaign that had, I think, 6 players in it, and each player was playing a different system. Now, I'm not saying they're playing different characters or they were playing like different versions of the system. No, no. Each was playing a character from an entirely different role-playing game that had no relationship to each other. And he still pulled it off. And everybody had fun. And one of the characters was a frog with, I think, a 30 strength. So yeah, he was very talented, and you could do that kind of thing and have fun doing it. I'm not dissing folks that want a simple, more gritty game. I'm just saying that if you have the possibility of doing wild and wacky things, do them if you want to. All right? That's a style of play, and some people like it. But 5th edition is saying is that you can't do that. 5th edition is saying is you get this much fun. I'm going to give you 2 real-world examples. The Mountain, the bodybuilder and actor, and Einstein. Under 5th edition, neither of those peoples exist. Neither the Mountain nor Einstein can exist in 5th edition because both of those people have higher than 20 stats. They have dedicated their lives. They were born into the world with, natural affinity for their spheres of expertise, strength, and intelligence. But they also then went out, took the effort to really train themselves to make the most of it. I mean, the Mountain didn't have to train himself to become one of the strongest people in history, but he has. He was born with certain advantages. I've seen a picture of him with his father and his grandfather. They're all giants. I'm personally convinced that he actually has Jotun blood flowing through his veins. And then Einstein, he was born with a natural intellect, but then he took the effort to hone it, to do something with it. And both of these people broke a 20. They're much more intelligent and much stronger than 20. And they don't exist in 5th edition. And that's a shame. I would have no problem if somebody wanted to play a dwarf, a first level fighter who had a 20 con. I got no problem with that. So if he's got 50% more hit points than your average fighter, who cares? I can work with that. If somebody wants to dedicate themselves to having a fighter that just doesn't go down, that's a great concept. I would play the hell out of that. In fact, I've been thinking I may do a character focus on a dwarf just like that for fun. But you can't do that and have fun under 5th edition because you can't dedicate yourself and pump that stat above a 20. Now, this will result in characters that have more diverse stats. So you're going to have your max stat at 20, your main focus, obviously intelligence for a wizard. But they're also going to be sinking points into other things because they can't go above a 20. So yes, you are encouraging or forcing people to be more diverse in their statistics. Okay. If you wanted to do that, you could have just given people more points. You didn't have to put the cap in place. Or when you're designing the characters, you say, okay, I want characters that are more diverse. So you have to do this and this and this at first level or in the early years, and then you can, do what you want to with your main stat and take it to that sky's the limit. There are ways around it other than the rules themselves telling you that you cannot have a stat above a 20. I read that and it stopped me dead in my tracks. Not happy. Would not recommend. So yeah, like I said, I'm drilling fairly deep into this, and I didn't want this to diffuse my overall thoughts on the game when it comes to around me actually doing a review, um, which is hopefully coming someday, maybe before I die. And so I'd like to talk to you folks. I want to get some feedback from you. How do you stand on stat caps? Are you okay with them? Do you think they encourage certain types of play? Do you think they prevent certain types of problems that the writers obviously thought they were addressing? That by changing the bonus range from 1 to 5 to 1 to 3, by putting stat caps in there, by reining in. There's so much reining in both in P2 and in 5th edition. It just astounds me how much they're just like, no, this is where we're playing now. I don't like it. The trend in both of these systems is just not something I'm enjoying to read, even though I do find certain aspects of the games to be quite interesting. All right, so let's talk about stat caps. And do you think they're realistic? Do you agree with me that there are people in the real world that they've blown past 20 without any problem? And they, let's take a look at Buddha. Buddha's got higher than a 20 wisdom. But yeah, let's talk about stat caps and what you think about them and your experience of using them. And do you think they should be like just obliterated?